What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. As you can see, I'm out in the garage and I'm working on my Mk2 Escort today because we're going to be making some huge progress. Now, if you've been following this series, I recently uploaded a video where I finished the underside. Now, I coated this in some Tough Ox tintable spray and it just looks so good. It's exactly how I want it to look, and now we can really crack on. And in this video, I'm going to be fitting the engine and gearbox. So yeah, really exciting. I'm pleased that I'm finally at this stage and we can get the engine and gearbox in. Then I can tinker about with all the wiring, plumbing in the cooling system, the electrics, and yeah, just tinkering about with it and finally getting my Escort on the road. So without further ado, let me show you guys what I'm going to be doing first. I do have my 2.1 Pinto under this cover, which I will be removing very soon. Down here we've got the Type 9 gearbox. The other day I come out in the garage and I just wasn't happy with the way it's looking, so I gave it a quick lick of paint and that soon brightened it back up again. And we've got my cross member down here. I gave this a second coat of paint as well, nice and shiny again and ready to be fitted. And also down here we've got a parcel, so we better unbox that first. Who can guess what it is yet? So here we've got a genuine Ford RS2000 clutch fork. There we go, it's brand new. I'm pretty sure this is made from Ali, and it even has the Ford part number pressed in. So I was actually quite lucky to source this clutch fork. I went down to Burton Power recently and asked them if they had one in stock, but unfortunately they'd all sold out. So they sent me to Retro Ford and luckily they still had a few in stock. But the story goes that Ford are still producing these, but they've bumped the price up to over £400. So there's going to be a shortage of these very soon, and a lot of pattern ones used, I'm sure. But yeah, I've got a genuine Ford one, and yeah, I'm very glad that I managed to purchase one. Whilst I was at Burton Power, I managed to pick up a new pin which sits in the bell housing, one of the anti-rattle sleeves and their washer. So this is just a little kit that helps you when fitting the fork. And also I've got a brand new release bearing which I picked up from Burton Power a little while ago. What I have just done is I dug out the old clutch arm or clutch fork, and as you can see, this section is a lot wider than the RS one. The RS one sort of narrows down towards the ends to fit into the RS2000's bell housing, whereas this one I believe is for just a standard bell housing. So yeah, that is the differences. Quite a few little subtle touches as well. I think these gaps on the end are slightly different, but yeah, we needed this RS clutch fork to make it work. So first things first, I'm going to get my new release bearing and just clip it in here. Should just, there you go, that's all clipped in, as you can see on the back. Now all I've done is I've put the little sleeve onto the pin, or dowel, whatever you want to call it. I've got the washer. This is meant to just stop the bell housing wearing, so the sort of arm doesn't wear on the bell house and it just wears against this washer. As you can see, that's all in place now, so it just needs a couple of hits with a hammer. As you can see, that's now fully home. I've just got the sleeve on show there, and this should slot onto it. There we go. Look at that. And that is a clutch arm fitted and a release bearing. What I will do, just going to put a bit of white grease on there to keep that lubricated. And there we go, a nice simple job to start off this video. Now just before we get the Pinto off of the engine stand, I've got something to show you guys. Now in past videos, comment sections, everyone has been discussing what colour I should do the cam cover, and I'm glad to announce that I've got it done. Look at this. Honestly, I am very happy with how this has come out. Of course, it was a no-brainer. I went with beige, but I also got this sticker built by Mk2 Mitch, and that's been lacquered over. It just looks the part, doesn't it? We'll just ignore the surface rust on the inlet ports and just admire the cam cover. It looks so good. Now this was done by my good friend Taylor from Taytech MK. I'll leave all of his details in the comment section below. Now with the new clutch fork and release bearing all fitted, I'm going to turn my attention to the back of the engine. So I need to replace this rear main oil seal, and luckily I've got a new one here. And also, I was having a look at the spigot bearing, and a couple of the roller bearings are actually missing. So I shot down to Burton Power the other day, and I've picked up a new spigot bearing. What we're going to do first is replace the oil rear main seal. I'm just getting up in behind it, and it should come. As you can see, it's starting to come out. There we go. Lovely jubbly. I've just cleaned up all the area. I'm just going to put the tiniest bit of lube on the new seal, just to help it go in. And then we can slot it on and start to gradually hit it home. Well, I tell you what, I do like it when a job is nice and easy. I've replaced the rear main oil seal now, and that went on perfectly. I just tapped it evenly around and it gradually went in. Now we've got to tackle the spigot bearing, and I'm not sure if I hold the same hope with replacing this easily, because I've never actually changed a spigot bearing before, so yeah, it's a first for me. Now I was scratching my head on how to remove this, but there is an old tale, and I think it works, that you need to use a bit of bread. Yep, you heard it. So apparently, what you're meant to use is wet bread, and you're meant to push it in past the spigot bearing, and what it does, it accumulates and sort of compacts behind the bearing until eventually it's forced to sort of come out. So yeah, it might get a little bit messy, but we're going to see if this works. I'm not sure if it will, but we'll give it a go. I have wet the bread, and in all honesty, this is absolutely disgusting. It's just, yeah, horrible. I've never used a food item as a tool, but yeah, don't let the Snap-on man hear about this, because he might print Snap-on over the top of it and sell a bit of bread for 100 quid. Right, anyway, this is grim. Let's get this in there, and hopefully it works and we don't just make a massive mess. All I know is this is going to get very messy soon. Right, okay, so I've been on this trying to remove the spigot bearing for about an hour or so. Now this bread method, I think it's absolute rubbish. Loads of people recommend it. I went on the Escort page on Facebook, and so many people say bread to remove these, but I just wasn't having any luck. I tried all different sockets, I tried all different variations, and the bread was always finding a way to come out. So, I'm scratching my head, and I just went in full guns blazing. A couple other people recommended to just hit it with a chisel and break it up. So that's what I've done. I've gone along it a couple of times with a chisel, bang, 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 and I've made like a cut in it almost. And then what that's done is that has allowed me to now free it off. I think it was free. Yeah, there we go. Although I haven't had this out yet, so it's still quite tight in there. Come on, there we go. As you can see, I've just got sort of the outer race to the bearing, and up here there's my crack that I made. So I literally just went along it with a chisel, and that's just alleviated the tiniest bit of pressure and allowed me to pull it out. So yeah, what a pain in the arse. Bread didn't work for me, but apparently it works for some people. I've just had a load of brake cleaner in there. I've now cleared out all the excess bread that was stuffed in there. But yeah, very happy that I eventually got there in the end. If in doubt, whack it out. What I'm going to do now is fit the new spigot bearing. I've given it the tiniest spray of maintenance spray just to sort of help it in. Not that it will help it, because it's probably going to be very, very tight. Got a nice little block of wood here. Going to make sure it goes in nice and straight. Oh, look at that. That is going in absolutely perfectly. There we go. My new spigot bearing's fitted. Anyway, I'm going to crack on and get rid of this mess that I've made over the hour struggling to get that spigot bearing out, and I'll catch up with you guys because we've got some more parts to fit. So what we've got next is this flywheel. So this is a flywheel I'm going to be using for the engine. Now this is a lightened and balanced flywheel that was given to me by Lee. He's on Instagram. This is, I think, freshly lightened and balanced. There wasn't any markings to sort of show wear previously, and I've just put a bit of emery paper over it because it did collect a slightest bit of surface rust whilst it has been stored. Now if we move over here, I've got my clutch. So this is a clutch plate, and the clutch. Now this is just I think it's an LUK clutch. I got it from Burton Power quite a while ago now, and yeah, this is just a completely standard Pinto clutch. But I'm not going to be ragging this thing about too much in the first few years. Then I can start sort of upgrading the clutch and stuff like that if I do find the limit. I certainly won't be burning a clutch out every week. Now just moving back onto the flywheel, we will be fitting this in a second, but as you can see there's sort of extra holes up here. Some of them are obviously the holes where the clutch plate fits onto it, but some of them are where it's been balanced. So obviously once it's been lightened, it's then had to be balanced again. And down here, I have also got some ARP bolts for the flywheel, so I'm pretty sure they're a really good brand to fit. Now all we've got to do, get a bit of Loctite, put it on these bolts. You don't need a lot on these. And then we will just put these in finger tight for now, and then we'll get the ratchet on them and start doing them up. As you can all see, I've now fitted the flywheel, but I don't have a spare set of hands and I need to tighten all of these flywheel bolts up. So what I've done is I've got an old rusty bolt, I've put it through a bit of the engine that meets up to the bell housing, and I've wedged it with a screwdriver. So as I get my bar on the end of one of these and turn it round clockwise to tighten them up, the flywheel will be chocked by this screwdriver. I've used this method ever since I was an apprentice and it really does work for me. If you watch that, there's the tension's gone on it now. So there you go, look, I can just tighten it up without the engine moving, and then I can move to the opposite bolt and do the same with that one. Look at that, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Why work harder when you can work smarter? Clutch time. Sometimes these say what sides to fit it, but for obvious reasons it's not going to fit like that. So it's definitely going to fit like this. And obviously the clutch needs to be centralised, so the input shaft can go straight through this and sit in between that spigot bearing. But I don't have a clutch alignment tool here in the garage, and I don't have a spare input shaft, which sometimes people use. But what I'm going to be doing is kind of the old-fashioned way. I'm going to be putting it up, and then because I've got it out of the car, it's going to be a lot easier for me to feel around and centralise the clutch. All you got to do is make sure it sort of meets up with these edges on the clutch plate. So I've done this before. All you got to do is make sure it sort of sits like that, and then when I'm doing up the bolts, I'll be sort of making sure it stays in place. It does take slightly a little bit longer, but only by a couple of minutes, and you can get it nice and central. That little bit of explanation might have not made too much sense, but it should do in a minute once I sort this clutch out. The only thing is you've got to sort of wrestle with it to get the clutch plate on and the clutch together, but we should be winning in a sec. So there might be a few people shouting at me in the comment section below, but this is sort of using your initiative. So what you got to do now is line the clutch up with a clutch plate, couple of taps, that's nice and flush, and then you go around to another corner, say this one, that's nice and flush, and then you just got to sort of get underneath it now, which I won't be able to show you guys, and make sure that it's pretty flush. Now the old method can be a little bit of a faff, but when you don't have a clutch alignment tool, it's the next best thing. As you can see, that is sitting dead central now. Very, very happy with that. There we have it. That is the clutch and the clutch plate all now bolted down to the flywheel. I used the same method of doing up them bolts as I did with the flywheel. The time has now come to fit the gearbox onto the engine, and it's time to also play what's inside the box. Well, what is inside the box? £120 worth of bolts. That's what is inside the box. So I went on eBay the other night and I just selected loads of Escort bolts. One bloke on there does them. I'll probably leave his eBay account in the description box below. What's this for? Type 9 gearbox screws / bolts. What we got here? We've also got some Pinto clutch pressure plate bolts. No way. I didn't realise I'd ordered them. Most of the stuff in here is like for suspension, cross member and bits and bobs. So it looks like I'm going to have to renew all of them bolts now, considering I have purchased them, I might as well use them. Well, we'll go for a take two, shall we? I've now replaced all of them clutch plate bolts. I've done them individually, so the clutch doesn't need realigning. I just took them out one by one, done them all up again, they're all tight. Now the bolts I was looking for in that box were these ones, Pinto bell housing and starter motor bolts, stainless. So I've got a nice bag full of them, and they will help me marry up my gearbox to the engine, which is what I'm about to do now. Right, well, this is going to be fun. So let's get the gearbox somewhat close, and then we can try and get it married up. There we go. She's going. There we go. She's all on. Let's get some of the bolts in quickly. We are making some great progress, and the gearbox is now fully bolted up to the engine. As you can see, all of the new bolts now bolted on, and the same on this side as well. Really happy with that. There is 2 bolts underneath as well. I had to sort of tilt the engine from one side to another to get them in, but yeah, the gearbox is fully bolted up. And I've just opened the garage door because I've got the engine stand out, as we need to get the engine back out onto the stand and under the Escort to lift it up into position. Okay, so let's have a little catch up. I've raised the Escort up a little bit and I've moved the axle stands back slightly because it wasn't high enough to allow the engine to fit underneath. Anyway, I've done that, and I've now wheeled the engine underneath and got it jacked up onto the engine crane. As you can see, it's all sorted and it's all ready to be lifted up into the bay. Oh, and there is one other thing, the engine mounts. I need to put them back on, so I'll quickly bolt them on as well. Oh my days, we've got the engine in finally. Look at that, engine and gearbox fully in, and I've also got the cross member bolted up. Now that was an absolute pain in the arse to get fitted. What I had to do in the end is I lowered the engine back down, I put both engine mounts on, and then I put the cradle on the engine mounts, and then I lifted it all up together and bolted the cross member to the car. Yeah, it was a bit of a pain in the arse. I was trying to do it a different way, but that is how I done it in the end. I just lifted it all up as one with the cross member on. Honestly though, how good does that look? It's all sitting in there. I am so happy. I was taking huge precautions when lifting up the engine and gearbox into position. I've got cardboard wrapped around the gearbox because I was really praying out that I was going to damage some of the paintwork, but yeah, we seem to have got away with that, and the engine is now in situ and resting on its cross member. I've just moved to the back of the gearbox. As you can see, it's been held up currently by a block of wood on my jack. Now we're going to have to do a bit of work to this gearbox mount. As you can see, I have already got some studs in there either side, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys a bit more about how I plan to fit the gearbox mount. Right, so here is the gearbox mount that I purchased. I think some people even call this a gearbox cross member, but we're going to call it a gearbox mount just to not get confused with the engine cross member. Anyway, I purchased this from Retro Ford last year sometime, and this is meant to be for a wider tunnel, but I actually found this wasn't wide enough for my application. Now I sent them an email and they told me this is the widest mount they do. If it is too short, then just send it back to them. But I thought I'd try and make it work. As you can see, I've added 2 bits of metal onto the end of the mount, and they're probably about 3 inches in length, I'd say, maybe a bit shorter than that. They've gone a bit rusty just because they were for mocking up purposes only. So yeah, I'd say probably the bolt holes, probably about 2 inches. So what I need to do basically is extend this mount, and I need to get some better metal because this is just some really flimsy 0.5mm probably metal. Now on cue, here comes the new bit of metal. or the new metal that I'm going to be using. Now it's quite hard to actually show on the camera, but this metal is actually 2mm thick, so this will be a lot better and perfect to extend that gearbox mount. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get to work measuring this mount up and make two really nice plates to go on the ends of this mount so I can extend it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck them in here. I'm going to take all this paint off and I'm going to put some nice welds along them. Now just before I start cutting and welding my gearbox mount, I just wanted to touch on the fact that I could have gone for a Capri gearbox mount. I think either a Mark II or Mark III fits, but I didn't choose that. That was another option, and if this doesn't work or it doesn't prove to be man enough in the future, then I can always go down that line. I'm going to measure from the bolts one to another to see how wide the mount actually needs to be, so in future I could opt for that, but for now we're going to get welding and modify this mount. Okay, so I'm flying ahead with this. I've got the mount itself all prepped up and I've got my metal cut out. As you can see, I've just got one of them here. Now I have made this slightly longer. What I plan to do is mock this up, drill the holes, and then I'll sort of shorten it once I know where the holes are. So yeah, all I'm going to do now is give it some nice welds along this edge, along this straight edge here, and then back around here. Here is the finished result. I've now welded both of them plates onto the gearbox mount and I'm pretty happy with them. So these sections of the welds went really smoothly. I managed to get some good runs and sort of do them in one pass. But these sections up here, as you can see, I basically done one pass and I wasn't happy with the welds, so I went over the top of it and it doesn't look that good now. But I'm really happy that these are solid and I just went a bit OTT. I ended up doing up here. As you can see, I got a real good weld up here. Then it went a bit downhill, but it is what it is. I'm very happy that these are on there. They're nice and solid. And I always say this, guys, I hold my hands up and I say I'm no welder, but I do give it a go. I think the main thing with welding and sort of putting it on YouTube is everyone's so critical. People act as if you have been welding for 20 odd years, but I've only really started welding over the last couple of years. I've done some bits on the Escort that I'm really happy with, and I've got photos and I'm really happy with the welds. And there is other sections that I'm not so happy with, but when I compare my welds from when I first started to them now, they are better and I'm improving. So yeah, all I'm trying to say really is if you're going to comment on the welds, just be more constructive criticism rather than, oh, that looks like pigeon shit. So that is the gearbox mount fully painted up now. As you can see, I've went ahead and drilled the holes. I just used these old plates as reference. Now I will have to paint this again because obviously where I've drilled out the holes is taking a bit of paint off. But for the purpose of this video, I want to get the engine and gearbox resting on their own weight. I don't want the jack to be underneath. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and rebuild up this mount because we've got this middle section. We've got the rubber mount that it actually sits on. So yeah, we're going to get this all built up, get it on the Escort, and hopefully we can have the engine and gearbox sitting in there nicely. Right, and there we have it. That is the gearbox mount bolted up. I haven't completely tightened the bolts just because there is still adjustment to be made in the mount, but yeah, as it's sitting like that, I'm really happy with it. Now it is worth mentioning, if you haven't watched some of the previous Escort episodes, I have actually welded 2 really big bits of metal on the inside of the Escort, and that's what that mount is sort of tightening up to. So it is really, really strong. And here is just a little central video. Look at that. And the gearbox mount at the back. I'm so happy that we got the engine and gearbox fitted in this video. Just look at that underside. It is so fresh. I'm not quite sure if I've said this yet, but I've swapped out the cam cover and I've put the old black one on, just because I'd hate for that freshly sprayed beige one to get damaged or scratched while we're installing the engine. So yeah, I've got this black one on it for now, but as we build up the engine and it stays in there, I will be swapping it out to the beige one. Well then, isn't it good to finally see the engine and gearbox in my Mk2 Escort? I am really happy that we're at this stage, but I've got a little bit of a dilemma. I don't know where to go next. Now, I was thinking maybe I'll put the brake tower in and then start to run the brake lines, because I haven't got any brake lines at all on the car. And then I think I can start building up the engine. But if you guys want to recommend where I should sort of go next and what I should put on the engine next, please do let me know. But there is a task I want to do before I start building up the engine bay. Now, I want to get the Escort rolling. Purely and simply, it's just easier to work around. And I have actually ordered loads of suspension parts. I think I ordered them way back last year now, but I've actually got pretty much a full suspension setup. So what I'm going to be doing in the next Escort video is building up the fresh front suspension, getting it down and back onto some wheels so we can get it rolling about, and then we can dive into the engine bay, we can fit the exhaust, we can fit the twin 45s that I've got, we can start to wire it up, plumb in the fuel system, plumb in the brake system, and yeah, I'm getting excited now. And I won't lie, we are in the winter months at the moment, and sometimes it's hard to pluck up the encouragement and come out here into the cold garage. But I tell you one thing that does spur me on is you guys and your comments. I really do appreciate them. I get some real nice comments on the Escort videos, and the advice is second to none from you guys, and it's all taken on board and helps massively with the project. There will be another Escort video in the next couple of weeks, because I'm going to be cracking on with this. We need to get it done for summer. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, and if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel to see more. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, I'll see you guys later.